for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. There's a lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you. I know that life outside is so hard. There's a lot of things that can tear you apart. I know the road sometimes feel lonely, but remember you're not the one and only. There's always someone there to help you, a helping hand to pull you through. There's only one thing you should do: take my hand and join the Love and Life crew. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then that love and life guide you. Oh yeah.
Goeienaand. Good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. Well, welcome to tonight's live stream. And I would ask you to hold Liz, who's normally here, who's not feeling well, and also Charlotte in your prayers and your thoughts, of course. Now, tonight we're going to be talking about a very important subject, and this is all part of the Great Reset subliminally taking place before our eyes. We just haven't been told about it. And you can see the architect Klaus Schwab traveling around the world. He was at the G20. Why was he at the G20? Well, because they have just announced that the G20 countries are going to be releasing digital vaccine passports. And attending that very same G20 in Indonesia was Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates. And if you don't have the digital vaccine passport, very shortly, you will not be able to travel internationally, regardless of whether there's a pandemic or not. Now, of course, this vaccine passport is basically just the front end of the wallet, you know, where your central bank digital currency will be also held, etc., etc., etc. But if you want to know more about this, go to lovinglifetv.com, and I've got the whole story there, including one of the young global leaders, with her put about disinformation. Anyway, tonight I'm talking to Errol Naidoo, and we're going to be talking about what's going on in the classroom. And one of the areas we're going to be focusing on is what is called comprehensive sexuality education, and what this means to any children attending public schools in South Africa in the future. Let me just get that on. Well, I've got a video which I'll show you, which gives you a bit of a background to what is CSE, as it's called. That's comprehensive sexuality education. Here we go.
In today's changing world, growing up isn't always easy. Imagine being without accurate information and reliable skills as you navigate the journey to adulthood. Do myths end up masquerading as reality? Do peers, television and the internet stand in for reliable resources and information from caring qualified adults? Fortunately, comprehensive sexuality education, or CSE, can make this journey easier, more certain and healthier for many young people around the world. You may know CSE as life skills education, family life education, or HIV prevention education. No matter what the name, CSE aims to ensure that all young people develop the knowledge and skills to make conscious, healthy and responsible choices about relationships and sexuality. CSE has always been a part of many cultures. Often family members taught young people about puberty, sex and relationships. Now, as societies change, the responsibility is increasingly shared with health workers, teachers and schools. CSE in schools is led by trained teachers and professionals. It focuses on the development of practical skills and knowledge that is scientifically accurate and comprehensive. CSE starts in primary school with age-appropriate content and builds on topics gradually as the child grows older and develops. It looks at human development throughout every phase of life, including physical, psychological, social and spiritual dimensions. CSE gives young people a chance to think critically about gender and about their role in their culture and society. It teaches about tolerance, non-violence, respect, equality and empathy. CSE shapes values, attitudes and decisions about relationships, including healthy sexual relationships when the time comes. With this knowledge and these life skills, it's easier for young people to decide if, when and with whom to have sex, and how to say no if that's not what they want. It's a fact. All the evidence shows that good quality CSE helps young people to delay their first sexual experience. It also helps prevent HIV, sexually transmitted infections, and unintended pregnancy. Young people deserve to be healthy, happy, and to realize their fullest potential. They deserve to grow up in a world with CSE, a much less scary, less confusing, and less harmful place than a world without it. As leaders, teachers and parents, we have the responsibility to act now. So comprehensive sexuality education is part of every young person's journey to adulthood, no matter where in the world they live.
Okay, I don't know if you saw that little piece at the very end, but it's from the United Nations. That's who's pushing CSE. And right at the end there, it said, with support from Norway and Sweden. The Nordic countries are behind the CSE. And of course, that's right in the backyard of the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab. You join the dots. All right, let me get my guest on, Errol Naidoo. Here we go. Hi, Errol.
Hello.
How are you, buddy? Hi, Errol. I can't. Oh. Oh, you gotta love the South African internet. I'm gonna hit my head against the wall just now. I'm gonna just reconnect. We've obviously got a very bad line. Hang on, here we go. Okay, cancel. Let's reconnect. Hi, Errol.
Hello there.
Hopefully you can hear me this time.
I can.
Okay, perfect. Now, I can't see you at the moment.
Yeah,
There we go. There you go. Perfect. Okay. Alrighty. So you're still on your phone. The power not come back yet?
yeah, it has, but there's some issues with the internet feed.
Okay, right. Okay. Anyway, look, we can see you, we can hear you, and that's the main thing. Now, Errol, tonight we're talking about a very important subject, and I don't know if you heard the latest news, but just in case you didn't, I can tell you that at the G20, a secret treaty was agreed upon by the G20 countries, and that is to bring in the digital vaccine passport, regardless of whether there's a pandemic or not. Now, of course, that is the front end of what they're going to use for the central bank digital currency. And if you don't have that digital vaccine passport, you cannot travel internationally. Have you got any comments to make about that?
Yeah, well, that's a long time coming. The World Health Organization pushed for the international treaty where they could control the health decisions and policies of every country in the world, every member state of the United Nations.
Yeah.
And that to a vote, and it failed because a number of countries obviously railed against it. I remember Brazil was one of them. So they're going to continue to try to get this kind of UN control through the World Health Organization, UNESCO. I mean, UNESCO is already kind of trying to control world education. So that currency thing, I see that, what's that, FXT or something?
FTX.
Guy that FTX that went belly up,
Yeah.
and because of cryptocurrency failure, a number of nations and organizations said, okay, we want to kind of relaunch the digital currency. And I saw it on Fox earlier on that obviously gives them the leverage to just control your finances and all kinds of things. So yeah, that agenda is moving ahead steadily, along with many others. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah, well, just a couple of things of what you said there. The reason why the pandemic treaty failed was because 48 out of 54 African countries said no, and they were led by Botswana, which is interesting because Botswana used to mandate the vaccine for people coming into the country. And as far as FTX is concerned, all I can say about that is that it's very, very interesting that the guy who ran FTX was based in the Cayman Islands, which is a tax-free haven. But anyway, let's get back to the subject at hand here, which is what the heck is going on in the classroom in South Africa and in other countries of the world. And you mentioned UNESCO a second ago, and of course they're very, very involved in this. And what I'm talking about is comprehensive sexuality education. Do you want to give us an overview as to what this means for children going to a public school?
Yeah, so they're pushing comprehensive sexuality education into just about every nation, the schooling systems of every nation. It's driven and kind of managed and given oversight by UNESCO, which is a UN agency. There's a lot of money behind it, primarily from people like George Soros and others. UNESCO was devised by Comprehensive Sexuality Education, or CSE, the abbreviated form of Comprehensive Sexuality Education. CSE was devised by Planned Parenthood Federation in the United States, the largest abortion provider, and a number of sexual rights organizations. And basically what they're saying CSE is sexuality education to inform and educate children in school to make informed decisions about their sexuality to reduce teenage pregnancies, STDs, abortions, all those kind of good things, so that they can live a healthy life. But of course, when you go through comprehensive sexuality education with a fine-tooth comb, and many have, you would find out that it's actually sexual indoctrination. It's a tool to indoctrinate children at a young age, that they have a right to sexual pleasure from age 5, and they have that independent of their parents. They indoctrinate children with kinds of high-risk sexual behaviors, and this is supposed to protect them from STDs and HIV and teenage pregnancies, but they encourage you to experiment with high-risk sexual behaviors like LGBT and all of that. They also, I think the most egregious element of CSE is that it blatantly emphasizes children's rights to sexual autonomy over parental rights. So in other words, you're telling children that your parents don't really have rights. The right to tell you who to have sex with and when to have sex with and all of that. They also question the values and the religious views of parents through this CSE curriculum. So it's a very dangerous and harmful program. It's LGBT and abortion indoctrination, going directly to children, and it's possibly the worst thing that can be in the schools. But yet, hundreds of nations, well, not hundreds, but 100 and odd nations have already signed on to CSE and are busy implementing various versions of it in their public schooling systems. And so in South Africa, it's been a huge failure already, because over the past 5 years that they have been piloting CSE in certain provinces, in schools in certain provinces in this country, over the 5 years, teenage pregnancies skyrocketed. We have a teenage pregnancy crisis in South Africa, where over the past 5 years now, it's over 500,000 teenage girls got pregnant in the schools. A lot of them by the teachers, the educators that is supposed to be teaching the CSE. So teenage pregnancies, high rates of abortion amongst young girls, and the young girls have the highest rates of HIV/AIDS infections. So we can see that this thing isn't working, but our Department of Education is pushing it anyway because of the financial incentives. There's tens of millions of dollars that is being pushed behind this to incentivize it by UNESCO, getting private money from leftist billionaires and organizations. And so it's going through our schooling system, and it's doing more harm than good.
Well, the tragedy here and the real victim here is the family unit, because
Yes.
one of the things they don't touch on in CSE is the importance of the family. In fact, the subliminal message in CSE is your parents don't matter. It's what you think that matters. And the subliminal message, once again, is the family unit is irrelevant, and that's exactly what they want to do to bring in a one world government. Now, let's get back to CSE. Who actually devised CSE? Okay, I think we're back. If everybody can just put a 1 in the side chat, if you can hear the live stream again. Okay, so Nat says she can see me. I've lost you again, Errol. Your video image. That's better. Okay. All right. We're back. All right. Sorry, guys. Look, I do apologize about that. The creepiest thing happened. There was like a power down. That all the lights went out. The computers went down for literally 1 second. And then it came back on again. But that was enough to flip everything. But we're back. So we'll continue the discussion. So I do apologize, but hey, in South Africa, this is like your daily routine. So it's very, very unusual in Australia. The first time I've actually seen this happen in years. All right. I was just asking you the question, Errol. Who devised CSE?
International Planned Parenthood of America, the U.S. largest abortion provider, and a number of sexual rights groups, LGBT groups, feminist groups. They need to find a way to indoctrinate children by bypassing parents, getting directly to children. And the best way they could, obviously, is through the education system. And so they devised CSE as a sort of education program curriculum to help children make informed choices about their sexuality, reduce teen pregnancies, prevent STDs, and all those kind of things. But the ultimate aim here is to indoctrinate children with abortion and LGBT propaganda.
Yeah. Look, the one that matters or worries me the most is this pushing the LGBTQ agenda, because kids that age, they don't have enough mental or emotional growth or maturity to understand what the implications are. And that is crazy, because I played a piece of the CSE propaganda at the very start, and they say we roll this out at the right time when it's right for the right age, and that in itself is bullshit.
Yes, yeah. Look, these people don't care about age, because look, they're already the CSE is based on a sexual rights philosophy, and their belief is that children deserve to have sexual autonomy and the right to sexual pleasure. Children deserve or should have the right to sexual pleasure from age 5. Now, this philosophy has been coming on for a long time with Alfred Kinsey, the doctor, scientist, whatever you want to call him, but was also a pedophile. He experimented with children and all kinds of things, and he believed that, or he claimed that even babies can have orgasms. Babies. So this was a sick.
How would he know?
Sorry?
How would he know?
Because he experimented on them.
So he actually sexually interfered with babies, and then from that came to the resolution that babies can have orgasms. This is one sick puppy, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, Alfred Kinsey. You can Google, and there's lots of information about him, lots written about that. But yet, leftists follow all of this, and they promote the ideology of Alfred Kinsey, and Mary Calderon is another name of Sakis, that promoted this ideology that children deserve sexual pleasure from 5 years old, or even younger, and should be sexualized, because that's what CSE does. It sexualizes children. It teaches them about sexual behavior and how to, somebody said it should be rightly called abortion, promiscuity, and homosexual rights education.
Yeah.
It's not sexual education to teach children to make good choices, because it promotes high-risk sexual behavior to children in the classroom. So, one's got to ask, if you want to bring down young girls and boys' infection rates when it comes to HIV/AIDS, how do you do that by promoting the highest risk sexual behavior to them? It makes absolutely no sense. But yet they're getting away with it. because they're working with corrupt governments like the South African government, and they pumping millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into this, and that's why it is in our schooling system. Not because the people of South Africa agreed with it. Every time lots of people hear about CSE and its content, they oppose it vehemently. I think if you did a survey in South Africa, you'd find that more than 80%, close to 90% of South Africans would say no, would reject it outright. And that's why our government went sort of kind of secretly signed these documents with UNESCO, and signed on to CSE to implement it in our schooling system. They did that in 2013 in South Africa. We only found out about it in 2015, and we found out through. I was at a conference in, I think it was Spain, Madrid, World Congress of Families, and Sharon Slater, Family Watch International, was doing a presentation. She works at the UN. UN Family Rights Caucus, and she was doing a presentation about this comprehensive sexuality education, and she mentioned in her presentation, she's American, she mentioned that South Africa is one of the worst pushing this ideology and getting it to other African nations that have been resistant to it. South Africa was used to kind of as a springboard to get CSE into other African nations. And it obviously piqued my interest because I'm South African. I'm standing in that room, and I spoke to her, and she sent me a whole lot of information, and I've been fighting it ever since.
Wow. Well, look, I have absolutely no doubt that the actual real agenda here is to legitimize pedophilia. That's
Yes.
what's behind this, is to say, oh, look, these kids are sexually aware. You know, they know what they're doing. You've got boys becoming girls and girls becoming boys and all this sort of stuff happening. They know exactly what's going on when it comes to sex. So there's no need for an age limit when it comes to some predator, you know, targeting a young girl or a young boy. This is what's behind this. And if you look at the lifestyle of the rich and famous, and I'm talking about people like Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Justine Trudeau, those sort of evil people, they love the thought that they can actually now go and target young children. I mean, that's what's actually behind this. Back to you.
Yeah, look, at the same time they're pushing CSE into all the schooling systems of nations, there's this big push to normalize pedophilia. So they're rebranding it as minor attracted persons, MAP. So they don't call it pedophiles, call them pedophiles any longer. They call it minor attracted persons. And then you have all kinds of people going on to news channels talking about why is pedophilia shunned by people because it's another sexual orientation, and and so they already started the process of legitimizing and normalizing pedophilia by rebranding it minor attracted persons. You've got all kinds of scientists and educated people making arguments for the normalization of pedophilia. So the process has started, and it's started already, and it's way advanced. And so don't be surprised when governments and nations starts changing their policy on pedophilia and even the kind of descriptions of it and all of that. So CSE is kind of the grooming.
Educational tool.
Yeah, it grooms them so that when they're approached by pedophiles, they kind of awaken to all of this. They have sexual rights, they have the right to, any kind of sexual behavior. It's kind of normal and fine. And they even teach them that they mustn't be kind of indoctrinated by their parents' religious views and that, because it's kind of archaic and outdated. So it's a whole preparation and grooming of young children to become sexually active at younger ages. So yeah, they all work sort of hand in glove.
You know what I find extraordinary, Errol, is that anyone can go onto Google and you can type in one of the words, you know what I'm talking about, and the stuff that comes up there that is not age restricted. You know, it's open to everybody, and it covers every conceivable type of sexual diversion you could imagine. Now, anyone who's got a mobile phone with internet access can access that stuff, and that includes kids at school. You know, it is being pushed down kids' throats, and now they're being taught at school that it's okay at an age of 5. I mean, this is ridiculous. I remember when I was at boarding school, I was at Cornwallis, and in my last year at Cornwallis, one of the most looked forward to lessons that we had was the priest would get us in the library, the whole class, and he taught us about the birds and the bees. And what he did was he basically had a couple of diagrams which showed what a woman looked like, which showed what a man looked like. And he basically talked about it from a religious perspective. Now, I must have been about 11 or 12 years old at the time. Before that, I had absolutely no idea that there was such a thing as, well, I'm not going to go there, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. Because I'd been to an all-boys boarding school. Yes, I knew there's this creature called a woman, but I really was scared of them because I had no interaction socially. But when we had this class at the age of 11 or 12 years old, you know, it was so clinical that it was like, you know, this is how babies are born and da 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 da. And of course, I remember the kids in the class, they're all giggling, they're sort of laughing, they're sort of, because no one really understood what the heck was going on. But now they're indoctrinating kids as young as 5 years old with this shit. It's crazy. And included in that is sexual orientation and gender identity, or SOGI. Can you explain to us what that is?
Yeah, that's just another mechanism. Sexual orientation and gender identity is a policy. Like, for example, here in the Western Cape where I live, the Western Cape government that's run by the DA, they're pushing this policy in schools in the Western Cape. And basically what it is, it's to kind of make people of different sexual orientations, that again, LGBT, and people who identify as you know, transgender, whatever, these people become sort of a special protective class. And school setting, you've got to have special bathrooms for them, or gender neutral bathrooms.
Yeah.
Got to have uniforms that are, you know, not gender specific, non-gender uniforms. You've got to have, and then what they even propose in that book, the terms boy and girl and he and she must be kind of prohibited, and you must refer to people by non kind of gender.
So you use pronouns which don't sort of refer to your
male
sex. Yeah.
Your she or your girl, and that is to make these LGBT students, sexual orientation or gender identity students, is to make them feel inclusive, to create an inclusive and supportive environment in the school. Now, schools in the Western Cape, public school, could have up to 1,000, more than 1,000 students. Could have maybe 3 or 5 students that are LGBT who identify as such. So you have to change the entire schooling system of more than 1,000 students to accommodate 3 or 5, changing the toilets, everything. So yeah, they're even proposing, it's been a big thing. I sent a newsletter out last week about this, and it went viral, went all over the show, talking about the Department of Education, National Department of Education, and the Western Cape Education Department proposing these gender-neutral bathrooms. And people started going berserk, sending stuff to the political parties. They denied it, but it's in their policy documents. Especially here in the Western Cape, they have a sexual orientation and gender identity policy document that they're working through. We made submissions on it, and in that document, they proposed unisex bathrooms, and also that a male identifying as a female must be allowed to use the female bathroom. Now, why this is crazy is because we have such high rates of sexual abuse and rape of young girls in South Africa as it is, skyrocketing rates that our government just can't get to grips with, never mind, regardless of all the promises they make. We've got that already, and the police is completely incapable of dealing with this. So we've got that, and in America, there's been a number of cases where the most known case is in the state of Virginia, where a male identifying as a female went into the female bathroom and raped a 15-year-old girl, and the school board covered it up. They covered up the crime. The father of the girl discovered it, came to the school board meeting and went berserk there, and they had him arrested for that. Then they transferred the rapist to another school, got him to go to another school, and he did the same thing there. And so, it became a huge issue. Mothers came out and started this Mama Bear movement, where mothers would go to school board and just attacking them from a dizzy height. And it actually changed the outcome of the election there, where it was a blue state, and a Republican was elected in Virginia as a result, because he said he would support parental rights in education. So that made world news, that whole drama and debacle. And yet our government is still considering going this route in a nation with skyrocketing rates of rape and abuse and sexual exploitation of young girls in schools. We just saw on the news today, they interviewed a guy who said that the sexual abuse of young girls in schools is now off the charts, and it's by teachers, educators. And he said we must stop calling it sexual misconduct, because what it is, it's statutory rape. They're raping young girls, sexually molesting young girls in the school. The teachers are, and it's kind of hush hush, and they trying to hide it. And it's becoming it is already a big issue in our country, and yet our government, instead of dealing with the failing education standards, the failing teachers, there's so many bad teachers in our schools that's not trained properly and it's ill-equipped to teach, and the education standards are dropping, and you have all kinds of abuse and exploitation and things happening. Even the Human Rights Commission here in South Africa says most of their investigation is in the education sphere. And so while all of this is going on, they're pushing policies to make LGBT students feel inclusive and supportive, because they can't deal with the education issues and with the teen pregnancies and the rape and molestation of teen girls in the schools, and the skyrocketing teen pregnancies. They can't deal with that, so they pushing an agenda that is sort of foreign imposed, and so it just boggles the mind how these people think.
There's something that just, to me, really reflects how rotten this whole thing is. And that is that when you think about this, what you call the special protected class, you know, these people who decide that they're the wrong sex, they're going to be the other sex, they suddenly get like a special status in the school where you can't touch them, you can't bully them, you can't do anything to them because now all of a sudden they have this special protected class. You know what that's going to do? If you think about the age that they're telling these kids about this, I'm talking about 6-year-old kids, 7-year-old kids, those kids that are being bullied, they're going to see changing their sex as being a very simple way of stopping the bullying that's taking place in the classroom. So you're going to find those kids who are basically sort of on the outside of the main group, the popular group, and this happens in every single classroom, they're going to be the ones who are going to be most likely to say, okay, I'm going to become a boy when it's a girl, or I'm going to become a girl when it's a boy, because that way I'm going to get special protection so they can't bully me anymore. Now, it has absolutely nothing to do with their sexual feelings, but because they know there's a way of actually stopping that bullying, that's what they're going to do. It is absolutely ludicrous. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, look, it makes sense that they're saying now in the US that the number of young people identifying as transgender has skyrocketed in recent months, years,
Yeah.
last 2 years. And that is because they putting this protection on transgender, special rights, special this, special that. So children are all coming out and identifying because they immediately become a special class of person that's protected, and so that makes sense. I just got a report from CFAM at the United Nations saying that they were working on a resolution on bullying. We were talking about bullying, a resolution at the United Nations on bullying, and these leftist nations inserted language in that resolution that actually said that children should be given unrestricted access to information on homosexuality and transgender without parental consent, and should move more towards sexual autonomy. So a resolution on bullying, in fact, Mexico was the nation that inserted that language, supported by other liberal nations like Canada, the United States, and all of that. It was actually Nigeria that spoke up against it, and a number of pro-family nations, many African nations, all the Islamic nations, of course, voted it down and demanded that they remove that language before they voted to pass that resolution. But you can see the agenda at the UN. It's through the CSE program, the SOGI program. The main agenda here is to separate children from their parents, and then to directly have access, unrestricted access to children in the education system, and where else they can, to indoctrinate them with this ideology, abortion and LGBT ideology. So the main thrust, all the resolutions at the UN, the laws they're trying to push, is to separate children from their parents, to get that parental oversight away from children so they can have unrestricted access, so they can indoctrinate them. It's everywhere.
It's absolutely crazy. Now, one of the things that happened in the last few days was that a petition site that was put up by one of the Loving Life family, and I think it was Nat Quinn who put it up, which was about fighting against the idea of unisex toilets in the schools. That petition was taken down by change.org a couple of days ago for hate speech. Hate speech. I mean, seriously? And that takes me to this point. Are gender-neutral bathrooms and non-specific gender pronouns part of the policy? Now, obviously we know they are, but I'd like to just concentrate on this gender neutral bathroom or unisex bathroom, which to me is hugely problematic because you know kids go into an area where they're basically the teachers don't go in. They can go and lock a cubicle door behind them. You could have a young girl in there and an older teenager guy who claims to be transgender in there. This is hugely problematic because you're basically just you're opening up the whole gambit of options for kids by providing them with the wherefore and the whereabouts and how they can actually do something in private that seriously should not be happening in schools. What are your thoughts about these unisex toilets?
Yeah, I mean that is that's the objective. Is they argue that they providing a safe environment, inclusive environment for LGBT and transgender students, and so opening the bathrooms, having unisex bathrooms on gender neutral uh, bathrooms, because apparently identifying people as male and female or him or her harms these transgender people. So they've got to get rid of all of that and basically erase the identity of thousands of students in a school. Just erase the identity. You're no longer male, you're no longer female. We say that you're something else. Um, and they're doing all this to make the people that are confused about their identity, to make them feel welcome. But by doing that, obviously, as you say, they're opening a Pandora's box here, because
Yeah,
uh, it's already, there's many examples of boys identifying, saying I'm a female, going into women's locker rooms, showers, toilets, you know, ogling them or molesting them,
yeah.
and raping girls in the you know in the bathroom, because they're allowed in there. We've heard cases of girls at schools that's so afraid to go into their bathrooms at schools because males are allowed in there, so they don't go, and they're finding other ways to do ablutions and all kinds of things. So they're creating a nightmare for students. And the fact that our government is even considering this is just, there's no words to describe it. It is so mind-boggling, especially because of what is happening in our country. The rates of sexual abuse of young girls is just off the charts in South Africa. The gender-based violence issues, we got the teen pregnancy issues, we got the higher rates of HIV/AIDS infections, the sexual exploitation, we got younger and younger children engaging in sexual activity, we got child-on-child sexual abuse, which is another big issue, children raping children, molesting children. We've got all of those things going on. And our government decides we're going to pour fuel on the fire. It's not bad enough. We've got to make this.
I've got I've got a philosophical question for you here, Errol, because back in America, there was this infamous, I think it was a national 200-meter crawl. You know, the one of these the strokes that you swim in races, and it was for women. And there was a transgender guy who was a pretty good male swimmer anyway, who, because he was transgender, was allowed to compete in this race.
Mm.
And he beat the national record by something like 20 seconds. And the first woman who came in like sort of when he was touching the end, when she was just doing the loop to turn around. And there was so much outrage about this that the National Swimming Association of America said that this is never going to happen again. We're never going to let a transgender male compete in a female swimming pool again, because this is wrong. And I'm not even going to go to what happens in the change room, because, you know, you've got a guy who's pretending to be a girl in a female change room where you've got the swimmers wanting to change. I mean, there's so much here that just stinks. But the philosophical point I'm making is that now they're saying, okay, you can go to unisex toilets, you can, you know, share the same toilet as women, but you can't compete on the sport field against women. Now, that flies in the face of everything else they're doing, because you either go the whole hog, or you basically stop giving this special privilege out. What are your thoughts about this area?
Yeah, look, it's the whole thing is not rational. So you can't try to make a rational policy out of it. It just can't work because it's irrational. It makes no sense for males to compete against females. We've seen that on the sports field, in the swimming pool, and we see what happens. And it's like, is anybody surprised at the outcome just because a male?
It'll destroy female sport because women cannot compete.
Absolutely. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that. And everybody's pretending like this is kind of normal. A biological male competes against a biological woman. The biological male is just pretending to be a female. Doesn't change anything, does it?
No.
That male is still have higher testosterone levels, muscle mass, is physically stronger, all of those things. None of those change when you pretend to be a woman.
Yeah.
You know, you don't change physically because you think you're something else. So it's irrational. It's insane, and it's a lot of irrational, insane people pushing this ideology, trying to pretend that all of this is real. And all it's doing, it's harming and destroying people.
Now, Inspector's just written here in the side chat, apparently Dos Santos in Florida had a male swimmer. What happened to his message? I want to see that. Oh, come on. Actually, yeah. No. Inspector says apparently Dos Santos in Florida had a male swimmer disqualified in a woman's race. And you can believe that sort of thing.
Yeah, he's talking about DeSantis, Governor DeSantis of Florida.
Yeah, I think it must be Ross Santos. Yeah, Governor DeSantis. Yeah, that's who it'll be.
Yeah. Well, he's against this because he's a rational guy. He's the one that passed laws in Florida to give parental rights in education, and he was attacked by Disney, because you know Disney World is in Florida, and he was attacked by the Hollywood lot, the media. They called it the Don't Say Gay bill. It had nothing to do with gay. It was that children cannot be indoctrinated with anything, sexual indoctrination or racial indoctrination. He said that is not for education. It must stay out of education. They must just be educated. And the parents have the full right to determine what kind of education their children is getting. They must be involved in that. So he passed that bill, which was very popular, and the left hate him for that. So that, you know, males pretending to be females competing against females in sport won't happen in Florida because he's kind of a conservative and a rational person. Where you have, over in California, you have nutcases like Gavin Newsom, who's the governor there, and this guy is kind of, I don't know, got people, thousands of people living on the streets in tents, drug dealers.
Oh, look, it's shocking what's happening in California and San Francisco. Apparently, the streets are covered in sewage, and it's not because the sewers don't work; it's because people just crap in the streets, and they just don't care. It's just absolutely disgusting. Now, I want to get back to our CSE. Okay, so instrumental behind this is the United Nations. Now, we know the United Nations are the front for the one world government. There's no question about that. We know that they're closely tied up with the World Economic Forum because there's certain agreements that they've sort of come to, and the agenda is 2030, where we will own nothing, but we will be happy. That's the agenda for 2030. So,
Yeah.
talking about the United Nations, have they passed resolutions making CSE and SOGI mandatory? And before you respond to that, I should just mention that earlier I said that they've now basically made it, you've got to have a digital vaccine passport to travel internationally. And that was decided at the G20 in secret by the major countries of the world. And guess who attended that conference? Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab.
Mm.
Now, let's get back to the UN and CSE and SOGI.
Yeah, the surprising thing about CSE and SOGI is that it doesn't exist in any UN document. And the reason for that is they cannot pass any resolution and get the member states to vote on it because comprehensive sexuality education is always rejected by the majority of nations when they try to insert it in documents, UN documents, to try to ratify it. The right to abortion is not in any UN document. Sexual orientation and gender identity is not in any UN document. They can't get it in there. Why? Because if they do put it in any document and the member states have to vote, most African nations vote against it. All of the Islamic nations vote against it. Russia votes against it because Russia is pro-family. Nations like Poland, Hungary, they vote against it. They voted down, and others. So you can't, in a 192 member state body, you can't pass these kind of things. So what happens is the UN agencies, UNESCO, UNFPA, UNICEF, World Health Organization, the agencies push these agendas, CSE, SOGI, and others, making it seem like it's kind of it's UN, it's what's the word, UN documentation or resolutions that have been passed, and so that's how they get it into member states, offering lots of incentive dollars, money, but at the UN itself, they've never passed any resolution kind of ratifying CSE or SOGI or any of these things.
So
interestingly enough,
yeah, please go ahead.
Interestingly enough, in the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, a document that was signed by all the member states in 1948, in that document, outlining the human rights and what the United Nations would be sort of predicated on, the foundation of the United Nations and its founding, all of the clauses in that Declaration on Human Rights, it's about the rights of the individual, except for Article 16 that says the family is the fundamental and natural unit of society and is entitled to protection by society, by the state, and by society and the state. So it actually says in that document that the family is the natural group unit of society. It's the building block, it's the nucleus of society, the family, the natural family, and it's entitled to protection by society and the state. So that's in that declaration. It's been there since 1948. Yet the United Nations is doing everything to undermine, break down, and dismantle the family that is in their document, their resolution, to support and promote ideologies and lifestyles that is not in their resolutions and documents.
Yeah. Now, critical to this discussion should be parents. Are parents included in their child's sexual education?
No, not at all. And this agenda is growing and escalating, and they're trying to get it in everywhere. I just told you about what they try to do with this resolution on bullying. Uh, in fact, saying that children should have unrestricted access to information about homosexuality and transgender and even pornography, age appropriate, they call it, age appropriate pornography. If you ever heard of such a thing, that children should have unrestricted access without parental consent. So the parents shouldn't have any right to restrict children to access this kind of information. They wanted that in documents. In comprehensive sexuality education, the entire program is just full of emphasizing the rights of children and undermining at the same time the rights of parents.
Mm.
So parents are being pushed out of the way. They're doing everything to bypass parents. They want to get directly to children in the education system to indoctrinate them, and they don't want parental interference. You see, and so that's why the work we do at Family Policy Institute, we're educating parents and educators and grandparents and civil and religious leaders. We give them information. Guys, wake up. This is happening. It's happening right in our schooling system. And they're trying to cancel parents so that they can indoctrinate their children, so they could kind of capture the next generation. You can't get to the parents because the religious people, they set in their ways. Let's get to the children so that we get the next generation. We indoctrinate them and we groom them with all this ideology. And so parents are kind of the enemy. When you look at CSE, SOGI, all these kind of things, they're trying to get parents out of the way.
Well, look, I think the pivotal word there is grooming, because that's what's going on in the schools. There's no question about that. Now, has CSE helped to reduce STDs like HIV, AIDS, teen pregnancies, etc.? Now, I think you touched on this before, but maybe you'd like to just talk about the damage that's been done as a result of CSE in schools.
Yeah, they claim that it does all these wonderful things, but there is absolutely no evidence for it at all. In fact, the opposite. It's just a disaster. A number of nations, a number of prominent organizations, mainly in America, did a research on the claims that UNESCO make about CSE, the outcomes, and their conclusions was that CSE does more harm than good. It does nothing of the sort. It doesn't reduce early sexual behavior, sexual debut. It doesn't stop teenage pregnancies. In fact, it inflames it. It encourages it. And so they recommended that policymakers reject CSE in their nations. And these are prominent organizations. And they unpack or just expose UNESCO's claims as ludicrous. Everything they make and say about CSE is just not true. And so it's a whole PR campaign with hundreds of millions of dollars behind it.
It's all about the money.
Yeah. In South Africa, they hire celebrities and well-known personalities, and they pay them in dollars to promote CSE and talk up, the benefits of CSE. These people don't even know anything about CSE or the benefits. They're just given a script. And because influencers and they're popular, they're celebrities, they just do it because they're getting money.
Yeah.
And so UNESCO's got the money, and they're pushing a PR campaign that is not true. It's lies. There's no evidence. Nobody's doing any real investigation or research on the outcomes of CSE. They're pushing it now for 7 years here. But the one thing that stands out, when they brought it in, when they signed on to it in 2013 and started kind of implementing it in different schools, in different provinces, now, it's 2022, so there's about 8-9 years, almost 10 years of CSE being implemented in our schooling system. Yet our teen pregnancies rates is skyrocketing. We're in a crisis. Like it's 136,000. The report said that girls between the age of 10 and 14, just think about this, girls between the age of 10 years old and 14 years old, there were almost 15,000 girls in that age group that got pregnant in 1 year, right, in our schools. While CSE is being taught and piloted, and this is supposed to be helping reduce. So you can see it's not doing any such thing. Sexual molestation, gender-based violence, rape and abuse, and all of those things are still at high rates in our country.
Well, as you said, Pandora's box has been opened. Now, what can parents and educators do to stop the sexual indoctrination of children in the education system?
Well, the number one thing, they must educate themselves about what CSE is. And we share plenty of information. We've got on our website, familypolicyinstitute.com, we've got a page called Protect Children SA. So it's a campaign that I started at the beginning of October, and we're putting all the information on there. So some of our researchers went through the scripted lesson plans of CSE in South Africa, and they meticulously documented every sort of lesson plan, what lesson it is, what grade, what page it's on, and it explains there what they're teaching and how bad it is, right? So I'm making this, on Tuesday next week, I'm sending out this information. I'm making it available to parents, educators, grandparents, anybody. Read this stuff. And it's a 7-page document, so it's not much, but it's concise and to the point. It tells you just how dangerous this program is. And so once parents are armed with that information, they can then write to their children's school governing body of the schools and say, we don't want our children involved in any CSE instruction. So if you're doing CSE programs in the school, in the life orientation syllabus, we don't want our children in that. And CSE is not compulsory in our schooling system, which means that school governing bodies can reject it. They can say, no, we don't want this program in our schools. If parents in their numbers contact the school governing body of their child's school or children's school and say, we don't want our children exposed to CSE. However, there is an alternative sexuality education curriculum called Smart Choices that's been developed by a South African, eminently qualified South African educationalist, been in education for 30 years, wrote curriculums and programs for the Department of Education. She developed a safe, common sense sexuality education curriculum that is very good and that includes parents. Because, CSE excludes parents. Why? Because if parents are involved, they're going to see the danger and the rubbish in it. This Smart Choices includes parents because it's safe. Parents will be able to see that. It helps children. It prepares them, makes them aware of what is happening in our world today, the dangers, the pitfalls, and how to navigate it. That's Smart Choices. So we're encouraging parents all over this country, contact your school governing body because they're the authority of every school, and tell them you don't want your children exposed to CSE. And if parents write to the school governing body and say that, then the school are legally obligated to keep that children out of the CSE if they've got it in the school. But the school governing body can reject CSE, can say we don't want that program in our school because most of the parents don't approve of it, and they can adopt Smart Choices and say, look, this is safe, and the parents are happy with this, so we're going to take Smart Choices because we want to give our children good education and good tools to help them with everything that's happening around them. So it's up to the schools to do that. But the core here is the parents to educate themselves and then to go to the school meetings, parents-teachers meetings, to speak to the school governing bodies, to write to them, to say we don't want our children exposed to CSE. It's harmful, it's dangerous, and then to ask for and request Smart Choices. So that's what parents can do. and we can win this if most schools don't want, say we don't want CSE, we rather want smart choices, then CSE will die, because it's the parents who have the final authority over their children, what they are taught. So we don't want our children exposed to that, and schools will have to say, no, we don't want it. And that way we can get rid of it in this country.
Yeah, look,
And
so something has got to be done. And there's just one final thing I'd like to touch on, and that is there's another rollout of indoctrination that's going on in schools in South Africa and around the world, and it's called critical race theory, or CRT, which is equally damaging. Is there anything you'd like to say about that?
Yeah, we had an incident in a school here in the Western Cape, Fishhook High, where the DA Western Cape Education Department hired some independent private company for a diversity, they call it a diversity intervention. And they sent this woman in, and she ordered all the teachers out of the school hall, and only the students could be there. And for 2 hours, she kind of radical racial and sexual indoctrination.
Yeah.
She actually claimed that black people cannot be racist. Racism is only the exclusive domain of white people, and all kinds of others. Children were traumatized. Children tried to leave the wall, and they weren't allowed to. And then they were traumatized. A lot of the children were crying, and had to go for counseling. So the DI canceled the diversity intervention program, and is now launching an investigation, because there was huge blowback from parents and people that saw it in the media and everything. And my newsletter I sent out last week also, they put out a statement and said it's what did they say? It's misleading and false, fake news, fake information, that this happened at this fish school, number one, and secondly that they're advocating for unisex bathrooms. It's fake news. Yet their document, their policy document that they put out on sexual orientation and gender identity, it's all listed in that document.
Yeah.
There's an article on Biz News that talks about that document, and it has the document attached in the article. I also have it because I did a submission on the document. So if we've got the document and they're denying it, so it's like a head scratcher. You put the document out and you ask people to comment on it, and now you're saying you're not doing it. Even suggesting that transgender people, males that identify as females, must be able to use the bathroom that they're most comfortable with, which is a female bathroom. Posing that in the document, and they're saying no, it's fake news. They're not doing that. Why? Because they're getting this huge blowback from people all over the country. So they're kind of changing their tune. So it is crazy. Politicians in South Africa, the standard of politicians is of a very, 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 very
It's shocking.
Kind of.
I just want to say something about the Democratic Alliance, and that is that they're no better than the ANC. They're also on the take. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation gave them 80 million rand earlier this year, 80 million rand. And following that, the DA in the Western Cape under Alan Wind was suddenly pushing for kids to get the vaccine. And of course, parents and everybody else to get the vaccine. Now, if that's not a highly compromised political party, I don't know what is.
Yeah, look, it's you can see it all over the DA and in the kind of things they're pushing, and it's got to be money because it's these kind of policies is not coming from the South African people. It's not coming from the citizens of this country. In fact, most of them oppose these things. So why are they pushing it? If they're elected by the people to represent the people,
they don't represent the people. They represent money. The
ANC doesn't represent the people. The Democratic Alliance doesn't represent the people in the Western Cape. The ANC doesn't represent the people of South Africa. They're pushing their own agendas. They're stealing, frauding, and all kinds of things. But there's the people are just surviving, barely surviving, because they just run everything into the ground.
As long as
So
the ANC are in power, South Africa is finished. I mean, that's the bottom line. Now, look, I've got two questions for you, Errol, which have come through the side chat. Michael has said, please ask why parents cannot go to the Minister of Education and take him to court for his acceptance of perversion into the education system.
Yeah, look, that's a difficult one. The Minister of Education is a female, Angie Machecha. And look, she signed on to comprehensive sexuality education, was done all legal and above board, it's government. So they signed on to this and they're pushing this. It's not compulsory. So schools can say we don't want it. But taking something like this to court would be very difficult to try to say, look, this was done without, it's a hard sell because, the ANC is the legitimately elected government of the country, and so they governing as far as they're concerned. It's misrule rather than governing, and putting this, they're always arguing that they put CSE and that into the schooling system, the programs. It's because of the high rates of sexual abuse and teen pregnancy, all that, and they're trying to reduce it. That's openly to help children, and that's sort of the line, and that is UNESCO's line. I think UNESCO feeds them all the kind of narrative. Yeah. So the court, unless there's something that is very blatant in what they've done, and then of course who would take them to court? I mean, it's going to cost a lot of money, hire advocates and all of that. You've got to be sure of your facts before. So this is not one of those. The easiest way to overcome this is through parents rising up like they do in the United States and saying to school governing bodies, we don't want our children exposed to this, and killing this thing off. But it's the silent majority. That's why these things are carrying on, because people are not taking notice. They're not speaking up. They're not taking action where they can take action. And so that's why we're just trying to educate and alert people to the dangers. And we're begging people to act, parents, and we're asking pastors in churches to tell people about this and to awaken them to it, because it's children, innocent children, that are in danger here, and we need adults to act. So that's basically what we're trying to do.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, I've got one final question for you here, and it's from Nat. It says, what about Muslims and girls having to adjust the hijabs in front of boys in the bathroom? It's just it's crazy.
Yeah, the Muslims, like what is happening in America. A lot of Muslim Americans turned up at the school board meetings, and they went, and they're backing the Christians in this bathroom story and LGBT story. So the same thing will happen here. The Muslims won't allow it. They won't allow males to be in the same bathroom with, females, Muslim females. So that would be a huge problem if they try to pass this. It's going to be tabled in our parliament next year. It's guidelines. The Department of Education is going to be tabling these guidelines. So there'll be a huge blowback from the Muslim community, because they really speak their mind. But already, if you see the response to my newsletter, and when I wrote about this bathroom thing, already you can see that it is huge.
Yeah.
And both the ANC and the DA both put out statements denying this, denying that, lying and twisting and deceiving. Yeah. But we'll keep on digging and getting the facts, the accurate facts out to people. because that's the only way you're going to pull this thing down, because politicians do what politicians do.
Mm.
And so we've got to give parents, grandparents, and the general public just the facts so that they can counter this onslaught against children. And so,
Well,
we just pray.
I can tell you that the lady I just spoke about who asked that question, Nat Quinn, she has a huge interest in this area. She actually was the one who set up that change.org petition against unisex toilets. And
Yeah.
she also looks after our forum on Loving Life TV. So if you do send out articles or press releases and things like that, and you'd like to put them on our forum, I'm happy to put you in touch with Nat, who does a fantastic job, because what we do, we have a daily email that goes out to the thousands of people who are registered on Loving Life TV. And on there, we have all the new listings when it comes to the forum. So that would give you another avenue to promote your message out to a new group of people. So let me know what you'd like to do there, and I can certainly put you in touch with Nat.
Okay. Yeah. You can send me your details. What I usually ask people to do, if there's people in South Africa, to subscribe to my newsletter, to go to policyinstitute.com and just click on the subscribe button and name, surname, and email it. Once a week, Tuesday, I send out the newsletter. It's one pager, just with all the information, links to, if you need to do anything, the links are there.
Right.
So you get all your information from it, and then you can act. Like on this coming Tuesday, I'm sending out the research on the scripted lesson plans in CSE. That's in the learners' books. So it's an expose on what's really in CSE. It's going to help a lot of people. So people get that, and it helps them. Lots of people share it with lots of people. It's, tens of thousands. I don't know, but everybody's been getting it. The last one I sent, it's been making rounds all over the country. So that's the best way of getting information, is by subscribing to my newsletter and then just sending it on to whoever, encouraging people to take action. Just a information tool to give people kind of information they're not going to get in the mainstream media,
Right.
and they're certainly not getting it from politicians. So we gather all this information through our allies, our contacts, and then we share that information with people so that they can oppose this terrible agenda.
Now, look, if Nat subscribes to your letter, are you happy for her to then put it up onto our forum every week?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, maybe that's the way we'll go.
The more see it, the better, because then you get, reacting and doing something, speaking out.
Sure.
So we want to get it to as far and wide an audience as possible. Again, it's just information, facts about what is happening.
Yeah.
That people can use, because they're not getting.
Yeah, absolutely. Errol, thank you so much for joining us tonight. And what I'll ask you to do after we've wrapped this up is to send me that website address, and I'll put it down below the video so that people can go directly to your website as well.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Take care and have a great evening.
Yeah. Same to you, Scott.
And I probably won't see you before New Year's Eve. So hope you have a safe and happy festive season, and a happy New Year to you.
Yeah. Same to you. Same to you. Have great holidays. You and your family.
Take care.
Thank you. Bless you. Bye.
All right, guys. That was Errol Naidoo, who heads up the organization that I'll have linked down below, the webpage. So please do go and check that out. Thanks to the mods for the we call Alta lightning fast Alta for for good reason. But look, hey, no damage done. Inspector's a old friend of Loving Life, and Mods, thank you for the great work that you do. And yeah, look, have a great evening, everybody. And I'll be back on Monday for the next live stream. And that's actually going to be a very, very interesting one. We're talking to a doctor in the US who's probably as well known as Dr. Peter McCullough. And so watch out for that. That's Monday next week. And have a great evening, everybody. And I do apologize for that little mishap in the middle of the live stream. Not much I could do about it. Take care. And we're going to go out with Op ons rots.
Ons loop hand aan hand op goue warm sand, so baie wat ek wil hê, so baie dit brand. Ek staan op my rots met golwe wat bots. Ons het geen vrees, want hy is in beheer. Ons sien al die planne van goddeloze manne. Ons weet hulle gaan nie wen nie. Dis geskryf soos 'n duif. Ons sal wen, aanhou glo, want hy is in beheer. Waai sterk, dis kragte wat werk. Die gevoel in my hart, dis vrees wat wil brand. Ons is boere met trots, met my hand teen my bors. Ons ken geen vrees, want hy is in beheer. Ons sien al die planne van goddeloze manne. Ons weet hulle gaan nie wen nie. Dis geskryf soos 'n duif. Ons sal wen, aanhou glo, want hy is in beheer. Ons sien wat gebeur, die leuen sal ons nie steen. Kom staan nog 'n keer, ek is stil, want ek weet, hy is in beheer. Ons sien al die planne van goddeloze manne. Ons weet hulle gaan nie wen nie. Dis geskryf soos 'n duif. Ons sal wen, aanhou glo, want hy is